time. There we go. All right. All right. We want to talk about becoming a more effective communicator. And so tonight, let's talk about ways that we communicate. And before I go through the outline here, I'm just curious if you want to turn on your mics and share with the group here. Did you do the homework assignment, and what were some things that you listed down on ways that you communicate? Who would like to share?
Body language?
Ah, very good. Who is that, Sherry?
Yeah.
Yeah, body language. Boy, can that speak volumes, can it?
Yes.
Okay.
And voice inflection.
Voice inflection, very good. Okay. Somebody else?
Tone of your voice.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
sorry,
right.
what, Carl?
Oh, tone of your voice.
Tone of your voice. Yes, Jeanette, you are correct. And Carl, you are correct as well.
Yeah, volume of your voice.
Yes. Uh-huh. Okay. All right, let's take a look at your outline. Visually, we communicate visually with a wink of the eye, or let's say you're talking to somebody and they close their eyes. They are communicating something. Maybe they're bored, maybe they don't want to hear what you have to say, or they've heard it all before, or they forgot to take a no dose before they met with you to talk. We can communicate visually in a lot of different ways. And then verbally, many of you have voiced this. Okay, there's one. Harsh tones to our voice, soft, and not only what we say, but many times what we don't say, or even how we say it. So verbally, a harsh voice, a soft voice, that can be frustrating, especially with some of us who have difficulties hearing. Carolyn would have a ringing in her ear, even with the hearing aids. It didn't really fully clear up for her. And so that hindered communication. Notes and letters. Would be interesting when the last time you wrote a note or a letter to your significant other. You did it probably during your courtship time. You probably couldn't wait to send a note or a letter. I find it very interesting that you could pick up your significant other, take them out to dinner, be together for 3 or 4 hours and just having a really great time talking and laughing and maybe sharing ideas, what your plans are, what God is doing in your life. You drop the significant person off, and no more than 15 minutes later, you're on the phone talking with that person for another 2 or 3 hours. Then we get married and life gets busy and we forget doing some of these things. But this is a powerful way to communicate. Carolyn was so good at this, and I'm not. Carolyn was a scrapbooker. And so when letters and notes would come in from people we had ministered to and there was some type of benefit or whatever, and they would write a appreciation note or a thank you note, Carolyn would show it to me and I would look at it and say, okay, that's nice. And that would kind of frustrate her a little bit. I should have gushed more, but she scrapbooked them. And every once in a while, when we got really, really down and discouraged, she said, hey, let's get that scrapbook out and just page after page, read the note or the letter that was sent to us to pick up our spirits. So keep that in mind as a way to communicate, a little note and a letter. Now, notes and letters are old-fashioned, aren't they? What do we have nowadays? We have emails, we have texts, and those are acceptable. It's hard to get the heartbeat necessarily through a note and a letter, excuse me, through a text and an email. Notes and letters, I think, carry a little bit more of a personal touch. That's just my perspective. Hey, how about this? How about smiles and frowns? Your facial expressions communicate. A snarled lip, kind of an Elvis lip there. How about raised eyebrows? Smiles and frowns can communicate either our acceptance, our willingness to hear what is being said, or frowns. I really don't like what you're telling me. I really don't want to hear this. And then body gestures becomes another way we communicate. You can communicate with your hands. If you are partial Italian, you'll communicate with your hands. That is part of their language style. We can communicate by a raised eyebrow. We can communicate this way. Take a look at your screens and tell me, can you see me? I'm up, right? You can see me? Yes, okay. I don't know whether I can do this or not. What does that tell you? Crossed arms in front of the chest means I don't want to hear what you have to say. That is a body language communication. You can communicate with your body by turning sideways when someone is talking to you. Kind of that semi-defiant look by turning your body sideways. Lack of eye contact is a way that you communicate. Another one, especially with young people, is rolling your eyes. When a parent is telling a child something, the hands are crossed, but then all of a sudden the eyes start rolling upwards, like, not that they're going to faint, but it's a defiant gesture. It's a defiant gesture. So with your body, do you know you can communicate with your feet as well? The Bible has a lot to say about our feet, and it's used for direction of life. And so we can communicate with our feet. Generally, when I'm communicating with somebody, I'm not looking at their feet, but I guess we can do that. We can communicate by touch, a pat, a hug. Of course, nowadays we can't do that because of the pandemic that we're involved with. But before all this came along, a simple touch, a hug, a non-sexual hug with somebody can communicate empathy, can communicate maybe sympathy, can communicate love, a message that I'm there for you. What can I do to help? And then we can communicate by simply helping. Asking how we can become involved or seeing a need and rolling up our sleeves and doing something about the situation within our ability and within our power to do so. Not always having to be asked to help. Sometimes a person can develop a reputation. Well, you can't go ask pastor to do that. He's not going to help you out to do that. We don't want that kind of reputation. We're communicating that, we don't care. This is your problem. This is your mess. You got into it, or you overcommitted, or whatever it might be. We want to be known as approachable, and that within our ability, we're willing to go ahead and help. Now, I joke around, but it's a true fact. I joke around, I have 2 thumbs and 8 toes, and I'm willing to jump in and help out wherever I can. Okay. Then what about giving? Giving. Giving a gift, unsolicited, out of the blue, giving a gift. Now, when I say that word, what comes to your mind? What comes to your mind is something tangible, like a coffee mug, like a gift card to Subway, like a gift card to Walmart. I don't know, something tangible that maybe can be given, you can put your hands on it, etc. But there's a lot of different other ways that you can give a gift. I think one thing that we can all do is give a gift of our time. Give a gift of our time. That is just as important as a coffee mug. And I think sometimes it demonstrates more of a message of, hey, I want to spend some time with you. Let's roll up our sleeves together. Let's tackle this project. Later on in our marriage, after the kids got out on their own, we set aside a certain amount of money for Christmas and birthday gifts. And it was one shot, and they could do whatever they wanted to with it. But I always, as a rule, until the last probably 2 or 3 years, especially when we've been full time in the RV, I always was resistant about giving gift cards. But you give a gift card to somebody you don't know what to give to, right? But what does that maybe communicate? To me, and this is just my personal perspective, to me, if I give a gift card, I haven't taken the time to know the person, their likes, their dislikes, what they would hope to receive. It's a lack of investment of time and involvement from my perspective. It's easier to go ahead and give a gift card and say, okay, I've done my duty. It's like coming to church and you give your tithes and your offerings and you say, well, okay, I've done everything that I can. Really? Then why is there only 10% of the people doing 90% of the work? Something to think about. Ways we communicate. How about this? Use of your talents or your gifts. Use of your talents or your gifts. Talents not necessarily meaning money here. I know oftentimes in the Bible the word talent is used of money. But in a broader sense, how has God wired you? How has God put you together? What has your employment experience given to you? What are you a expert in? So, go-to person? I'm sorry, a go-to person that they know. Okay, I know Karl can go ahead and build me a deer stand. I mean, he is an expert at building deer stands. So, what are our talents known for? And how can we make those available to people? A willingness or an unwillingness to share can communicate a tremendous amount of information. Do we have a willingness to share? Or are we known to be hesitant and have to be maybe cajoled, maybe made feel guilty to get involved? A willingness to share. And I guess at this particular point, we might want to remind ourselves that your unwillingness to share is hampering Christ from ministering to that person through you. Because everything that you have belongs to the Lord. I believe that is a biblically, theologically sound principle. So, what right do we have not to share? We don't have any right not to share. We don't have any, it's not, it should never even be a part of a discussion. You know, I think it was the Corinthians. Yeah, it was the Corinthians. Paul was taking up a offering from the churches for the Jerusalem saints because of a famine that hit that area. Do you remember that? And the Corinthian church was kind of hesitant, and one of their pushbacks, and I'll paraphrase it, was this: well, if we give to them and we have a need, how is our need going to be met? And Paul says, and had to remind them that, wait a minute, if you have a need, and it's not a want, if you have a need, God will supply it. He has made that promise. My God shall supply all of your needs according to his riches in glory. We will not be found begging bread. It might get a little bit thin, but as long as you have a cup of rice in your cupboard and you have a little bit of propane left and the water's still running, you can have a meal. Willingness to share. And then how about this one? Listening or not listening. This is a way we communicate. And this has been touched on with some of the other ones that are up on your screen there or on your notes there. Listening or not listening. Here we are having a conversation. I've used this illustration, I think, once or twice before, so be patient with me. Husband and wife are having a conversation, and the husband is beginning to get a little bit testy. And he is beginning to throw out his perspective on how his wife is managing the home or managing the finances or whatever it might be. And the husband is rehearsing things that one of two things have happened. Number one, it was never biblically corrected. Or number two, he just is using this as a ball peen hammer. And so what does the wife do? As she begins to hear this recording again, the wife stops listening, and she's already formulating her response to the husband. She's not listening. She is formulating her response to her husband, what she's going to say. And we role played this a little bit. Let's try it one more time. Karl and Kass, we're going to pick on you tonight. Karl and Kass are having a lively discussion, and they know what that means. And Kass is quite expressive about something that she feels Karl is doing. And she starts out her conversation this way: Karl, I really feel like da 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 da. We'll give an example. Karl, I really feel you don't appreciate me. All that I do, every time you go out and work on a project, I'm there by your side. You want to go hunting? That's your deal. But I go out there with you because I'm afraid you're going to fall down and break your neck and nobody's going to be able to find you. All that I do, and you never say thank you. You hardly are appreciative. Last time I heard anything from you about I love you is that you wanted something. And Karl, the more he hears Kass, has his adrenaline begin to pick up, and he is getting hot underneath the collar. And you know what Karl does? Karl responds something like this. This is just a pretend scenario, okay? I hope they don't do this. This is just a pretend scenario. Karl says, "Well, wait a minute. Look at what all I do for you. I put a new door on. I put new storm windows on. I remodeled the kitchen. Aye. And what does Karis do? Yeah, but what does Karl do? Well, and nothing gets resolved. Now, Karl, if this ever happens, then I have full confidence that it probably will somewhere down the line. Okay. If Karis gets into a knot here and begins to express quite lively something, and you don't know what's going on, you're a caveman at this particular point. You really don't get it. All right. You need to look at her and say, Karis, I did not know I was doing that. Would you please give me an example of how I make you feel unappreciated? You see the difference, guys? Karl will say, here's my resume of all the ways that I appreciate you. But he's arguing at the emotional level. See, that's communication, but it's poor communication. To improve communication, Karl would say, hey, please give me an example of how I'm doing it. Now, watch this. That is a good sentence to say, but it can be nullified by his tone. Oh yeah, give me an example of where I don't appreciate you. Hey, you just threw it out the window. The tone, okay? So listening and not listening are ways that we communicate. And there's about 10 different ways there. And you know what? We can probably do a half a dozen of these in probably half an hour, or at least throughout the day. And so we need to be mindful of them. Remember Ecclesiastes chapter 3, there's a time to speak and a time to refrain from speaking. Remember Esther, when the king said, whatever you want, up to half of my kingdom. And you know, she was approaching the king because of Haman's plot to exterminate the Jews. And she had fasted for 3 days. And as she was granted permission to come into the king's presence, she did not dump the memory bank, if you please, okay? She said, come tomorrow night to dinner. God had given her a 2-step process. So there was a time for her to speak and a time not to speak. And she recognized by the Spirit of God, this was not the time to dump this on him. And guess what God did during that 24 hours? The king couldn't sleep and called for the annals of people who had served him. And there was Mordecai. And Haman went home like a cock-a-doodle-doodle rooster. Boy, he's in tight with the king now. And so God worked in both of their hearts. And when Esther shared what was going on, game over. So these are ways that we communicate. Next session, I would like you to make a list of ways you can improve your communication. I just want you to brainstorm, because what we're going to do, and it's probably going to take us 2 sessions just to do this, because there is so much scripture that we will be looking at. There will be a bunch in Ephesians and a whole mess in Proverbs. So think to yourself, how can I improve my communication? Ask a significant other who has got close contact with you. Hey, what would you suggest on ways I can improve my communication? If you were to counsel me, what would you tell me that I need to practice on? Okay, that's your assignment for next week. Now, there is no class Thursday night, obviously, that's Thanksgiving, but Sunday we will pick it back up and we will start our new series on manipulation, what and where, and how to avoid that, and how to deal with people who are manipulators. And this is not psychology, beloved. We'll take a look at different psychological labels on how people communicate. But did you realize the Bible has a ton of examples of people who manipulated? And we'll also give you a list of, maybe 10, 15 things that people use to manipulate something from another person. And here's a thought for you. And I will not tell you the answer, but I want you to think about it. If manipulation is the use of words to get somebody to do for me what I want, did you get that? Then God must be a manipulator. True or false? You're going to have to think that one through. You're going to have to think that one through. Now, today I just found out that Dr. J. Adams passed away, was promoted to glory on November 14th of this year. Dr. Adams was a husband, he was a father, he was a pioneer in the biblical counseling movement. He authored over 100 books. He was a lecturer, he was a writer, he was a translator. 16 different languages his books were translated into. He translated the New Testament because he was a Greek scholar. He was a mentor to many young pastors just starting out, like myself. He was a counselor. He was a friend. He was a confidant, and so much more. I posted a personal tribute at the blog site if you care to go look at it. I knew Jay had been of ill health for the last couple of years, and I had lost contact with him. And friends from Canada let me know that he had passed, and a couple in Indiana let me know as well. Also found out today that John Haggai also passed away. So we're losing some stalwart people in Christianity, and the shoes are vacant, and we need to have people step into those shoes and carry the torch, carry the mantle that they're trying to pass on to us. I think of Elisha, who received the mantle of Elijah and continued on the faithful ministry there. All right, let me